next week. And I know that for parents and kids, this is a very, very difficult time emotionally, and routine changes and all of that. We should have mentioned in our live video a few weeks ago that you really got to start getting them ready for the proper sleep routines about 3 to 4 weeks before school starts. I personally have insomnia, so I've done a lot of research on sleep schedules and things like that, circadian rhythm and whatnot. And one of the things I learned along the way is if you start to get undisciplined about your bedtime or your kid's bedtime or something like that through the summer, which is totally normal. Do not feel bad about that. We do the same thing. But when it comes down to having to get them back on a schedule, it's important to let them step it down. For example, if they've been going to bed at midnight lately, then for 1 week, step it down to 11:30. Trying to go to sleep, lights out at 11:30 instead of midnight. The week after, go down to 11. The week after that, go down to 10:30. And that's why you really need to start these things 3 or 4 weeks before school starts, because your body doesn't take well to adjusting in periods of longer than 30 minutes. So if you go straight from, well, I normally go to sleep at midnight, but I got to get up earlier, so now I'm just going to go to sleep at 10:30. Your body doesn't handle that well. Your brain won't shut off when it's supposed to. You have, you have to train your brain when it's time to fall asleep. So if your kid has struggles, they're saying, well, I laid down at 10, but I still couldn't fall asleep till 11:30 or midnight because my brain wouldn't shut off. That's because they're used to using their brain between 11 and midnight. And you have to slow step that back down so that it trains their body and brain when to sleep at the correct time. But I am mostly going to hand this talk over to Miss Rose here because she deals with the younger kids' classes. And she deals with a lot of things like after school restraint collapse, which is a real thing where kids just lose their ever-loving minds when school gets out during the day and things like that, until they get more set into their routine anyway, and it becomes more normal. But I believe I've got a couple tricks, but I know she's got a lot more tricks and tips about this than I do.
Yeah, so when your kids get home and they absolutely lose their mind, it has nothing to do with you. Absolutely nothing to do with you. It is completely, absolutely normal. Just like when grandparents bring kids into class for the first time and they've never done it, and then the kid loses their mind. There's a whole other real mental brain term for what happens then.
Yeah, and it's not just not your fault. It's not your kid's fault either.
No.
It's really not your kid's fault either. It's an emotional regulation thing.
Yeah. And so in this case, when school starts and your kids get home, or even if they get home from daycare, like during the summer, it's called after school restraint collapse. And what happens is kids are like pressure cookers. And so they take in, we are too, don't get me wrong, we have after work restraint collapse.
Yes.
And so we take in all of those little things that would normally, we would just be like, no, I don't want to do that, whatever. And we bottle it up.
All right.
And it layers.
Let me take a second to say hi to Dota. We're doing really well. Lincoln, nice to join. Nice for you guys to join. Appreciate you being here. Awesome to see you guys. Thanks for the comments.
Yes,
go ahead, Miss Rosie. I may cut you off for that.
And what happens is it layers inside of us mentally, right? All those little things, all the times where we had to, or your kids, where they had to pull in their behavior because they didn't want to get in trouble, and it just builds and builds and builds. And so
right, and it happens with us too. Like me and her right now, you see I'm having a hard time. I keep cutting her off. I'm having a little bit of that restraint class myself. Like Saturdays are long for us. Like she starts work at 7:30 in the morning. I come in around 11 and we work straight through. Like she's about to be done. She'll get to leave as soon as we're done with this episode. I've still got another 3 hours ahead of me. So, it affects us adults too.
Yeah. And so by the time they get home and they are with their safe person, you, in their safe place, home, they're done. And they the top blows off that, and they are going to lose their little minds. They're going to throw tantrums. They're going to cry. Not all the time. It might express more in things that you don't want them to say, in ways that you don't want them to say it. It might express in them not playing well, not sharing well, throwing toys.
They're feeling their big emotions, and they've been kind of controlled all day. Yeah.
No, they've been super controlled. Okay, what I need you to understand, and we all know this about public schools, is that they want your kid to sit still all day
most of the day
long.
Yeah, but pretty much all day.
And that is not how children's brains are meant to be. That is not how little bodies are meant to learn.
Right. Here's the thing. I've done podcasts on learning before. Learning is something that is kind of a big subject for me. And the thing is you don't actually do most of your learning while you're studying. most of your learning happens during the unstructured playtime in between. So you study some things, you're trying to remember some things, you're trying to learn some things, but if you just constantly study for hours and hours and hours at a time, most of the material goes in one side out the other. If you really want to retain material, you have to stop from time to time, do something else for a while so your brain has a chance to move that information from your working memory to your stored memory. But that happens when you're not focused on it rather than when you are.
Yeah. Titan Twins, we're talking about after school restraint collapse. It's what happens when kids get home from school and they lose their minds.
Yeah.
And they go crazy and they're super emotional. So what ends up happening is through the day, your kid is building up cortisol levels inside their brain and body.
Stress hormones.
Stress hormones. And so when they get home, they dump that and they're like, they have to let go of all the stress.
Well, actually, Titan, this applies to you too. I use these tricks when studying in college, because if you try to study for like 4, 5, 6 hours in a row, you're only going to remember maybe 20, 30% of what you actually learned. You really need to give yourself time for that information to move into your stored memory. The normal recommended way to do this is about 45 minutes on, 10 minutes off. So 45 minutes to study, 10 minutes to go walk around, do something else. 45 minutes to study, 10 minutes to go walk around, do something else. This allows your brain to process the things you've learned rather than just moving them through your working memory and out the other side. So.
And I mean, quite honestly, I have a master's degree. I know most people don't know that about me. I have a master's degree.
Yep.
And there were times I was submitting papers at like 11:59 and 10 seconds. And I am shaking, literally praying the program doesn't go down while I'm submitting this.
Because it had to be in by midnight. Yeah, I remember those.
Afterwards, I was a mess for 2 hours because there was so much stress.
And it takes time for your body to process those stress hormones. Now, one of the most important things I think I can give you, especially if you're dealing with kids, but this is the same if you're going to college or adult or whatever, give yourself 10 to 15 minutes, or if you're talking about younger kids right after school, give them half an hour of unstructured playtime where they're allowed to role play things out. Now, unstructured playtime doesn't necessarily mean make them play alone. You can play with them, but allow them to take the lead and allow them to role play things out. What you're going to find is they're generally going to want to role play things like arguments and conflict. And it's because they have been bottling up all of these emotions to prevent causing conflict in school, because they'll get in trouble for that, and yet their bodies and brains haven't processed the conflict yet. And so through unstructured play, they can role play out the conflicts that they were thinking about through the day, and it allows them to process their emotions.
Yes, and that is one of the ways that we can deal with after school restraint collapse. Another one is making sure that after school they do not have screen time for an hour. And I know that's really hard because guess what? We have after work restraint collapse and we're touched out. We're peopled out. But I'm sorry, we need to take a back seat to this and let our kids get through that before we take our unstructured time as well.
Now, I see it a little bit differently, but this is coming from somebody who, you know, one of my favorite ways to role play through my conflicts that I'm dealing with is video games. Now, it's not that I get home and immediately do the video game. I've got to calm down first. So I've got to sit for a minute, take a walk.
For about an hour.
For me, I do it for about 10 to 15 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes. But.
But an hour is a good amount of time because that lets your kid have that decompression time right after school. And in that time, get them a healthy snack. That healthy snack will help them regulate those cortisol levels in their brain, and their body needs proper fuel. Stop talking to your kid about eating the right things for them. Talk to them about fueling their body. Hey, you burned a lot of energy today using your brain. Your brain uses a lot of energy. Let's get you a good snack. Right? Talk to them in the right ways about eating good foods, and they will think they're superheroes.
The why behind it.
Yeah. And then try to stop asking your kids questions when they get off the bus and pick them up.
Especially broad questions. Broad questions feel loaded to a kid. How was your day?
Did you learn anything?
Did you learn anything? Did anything interesting happen? The thing is there are way too many potential answers to those questions, and your kids have been answering questions all day long that are very, very specific, and then they get home and you ask them these really broad questions. They don't know how to answer. So when they say, I don't know, it's not that they're lying or hiding anything from you. It's that their brain goes, well, there's like 50 ways I can answer this, and I don't know the right way.
Yeah.
So they're afraid of answering it the wrong way, and so they just don't answer it at all. Instead, ask very specific questions.
Who did you play with today?
Who'd you play with today? Did you have any tests in any of your subjects today? Did you get one of your papers back? What grade did you get today? Just something very specific, very specific,
Yeah.
because they'll be able to answer the specific question. They're not going to be able to answer the great big broad question.
Yeah, no. So keep the number of questions short, small list of questions, and specific. That way your kid can think about, like, maybe even one good thing, like, who did you play with today? Oh, I played with my best friend. That's great. Did you guys play tag? Did you play on the monkey bars, right? Just a few very specific questions. And then, of course, movement, unstructured play. That's really important.
I recommend that before homework time. So I think too many
No.
parents get straight to homework right after school.
Actually, that was the next thing on my list.
Yeah,
Stop cutting me
I
off.
recommend some unstructured
Yeah.
playtime. 20 minutes will do before getting
Yeah.
into things like homework.
Yes, and literally the next thing on my list was don't make them do homework as soon as they get home. I know it's tempting because you want to get the work done.
But they
during
need a
work mode.
break. They need a break.
Yep, their work is what they've been doing all day.
Now, think about this. Like, our younger kids' classes start at 5 and 5:30 for a reason. We might start a 4:30 class eventually, but there's a reason we don't have a 4:30 class. The main reason for that is we want kids to be able to have 20 minutes of unstructured time when they get out of school to process all this stuff, and then enough time to at least get started on their homework before class. Because, like we said before, if you have trouble getting your kids to go to their sporting events and activities and things like that, the best thing to do is make sure that, like, 20 minutes before they have to leave, that they're doing. I know we just did this episode a couple weeks ago, but like 20 minutes before it's time to leave, have them doing something that's not their favorite thing to do. And homework makes a perfect thing for that. So give them 20 minutes unstructured play. Okay, guys, time to get started with the homework. Then they get 10, 20 minutes of homework done. And even if they're not finished, then it's okay, now it's time to go to sports practice. Now it's time to go to your training, your class, or whatever. They're going to be more than happy to get up and take that movement break so they don't have to sit there doing their math anymore. And then when they get home, they've been physical, they've worked out, they've got sweaty, they've worked out some of those stress hormones, and they're far better prepared to finish their homework at that point.
Yes, and remember, when they do have meltdowns, because kids will have
They
meltdowns.
will have meltdowns.
They are tiny humans with the same size emotions as us and not as much life to build coping skills
Yeah.
and experiences to deal with them.
We're
So-
just better at regulating it than they are. But
Yes.
I don't know a single adult that hasn't come home from work and wanted to cry, wanted to be in tears, but I gotta go get the kids. I gotta
Get groceries, I gotta
cook
do
the meal. I
dinner.
gotta run some errands, whatever.
Yeah.
And so we tend to cope by focusing on other things. Kids haven't figured out how to do that, and it's not always the healthiest way to do it anyway. So when they break down, it's not that they're trying to be bad kids, it's that they're trying to process emotions that they don't have the tools to process right now. So the big thing to go approach that is, it's okay to feel your feels. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to feel aggressive or something like that. But this is our chance to guide our kids to the healthy ways of expressing those emotions. So instead of yelling at me, can you just tell me that you're angry and maybe what's made you angry or what's got you frustrated, right? I understand that you're sad and you really need to cry and let it out. Here, give me a hug. Can you tell me something that made you sad today? Was there something in particular? Did somebody pick on you? Ask specific questions, right? Did somebody pick on you? Did you have some trouble in one of your subjects, or did you get in trouble for something or something like that? And then allow them to teach them how to talk about how they feel. To process emotions, the first thing a kid needs to learn is how to describe what they feel and talk about it without yelling and throwing a fit. Now, they're not going to be great at that at first, but it's up to us to guide them. Hey, I recognize that you're really angry, and I recognize that you really want to yell, but the louder you yell, the harder it is for me to hear you and understand what you're saying. Can you tell me more quietly why you're angry? And then they start to figure out how to learn how to express why they're angry. Half the time they don't know why they're angry, and then when you ask them, they start to think about it and realize, oh, I'm mad because of this thing that happened and I just haven't come to terms with it yet. And that gives you a chance to guide them through the most stressful situations in their life.
Yeah, and remember, tears aren't the problem.
No.
Tears aren't the problem. Tears are actually the answer to all of their problems. They just need us to meet them in a place of acceptance and grace for what they're going through. They go through a really hard time every day,
Yeah.
even on their good days. It's hard.
I would
And-
take that a step farther and say, even to the point that it's not so much that like yelling that's the problem. Now, hitting and aggressive things
Yeah.
like that, absolutely a problem. Yelling itself isn't necessarily a problem. I don't know a single adult that doesn't go outside sometimes or go out in a storm or hide their head in a pillow and scream, because it is cathartic, right? So if your kid's just in a yelling mood, you can be like, hey, I can't understand a thing you're saying because you're yelling and you're hard to understand. How about we play a game where we both put a pillow on our face and see who can scream the loudest through the pillow? This gives them a chance to express that through a physical embodiment, and then they're more likely to be able to speak about it more calmly after they've had a chance to let out the aggression.
Yeah. Now, if you end up in a situation where your kid is inconsolable and they are like choking on their own snot and spit, here's a couple tips.
Give them a drink.
Give them the coldest
Cold
drink of water you can find.
Yeah.
It will reset their nervous system.
Cold drinks just reset the nervous system, and the tears stop almost like magic within 10 or 20 seconds of that first cold drink.
Plus-
because guess what? You can't sob, you can't sniffle when you're drinking something. And if it's cold, it feels soothing to the throat.
And they know that they will breathe in the water. Subconsciously, they know they'll breathe in the water.
Right.
So they calm themselves down.
Yep.
Also, once they start to get a little calmer, then you can, this is why we keep small bottles of bubbles around. Because once we get them calmed down with that, if they start having the little, we can get them to blow bubbles. You have to regulate your breathing to blow bubbles.
Now, I don't use bubbles for that. There's all kinds of things you can use.
6-year-olds.
I like to make dad jokes in those situations. I start making goofy dad jokes. If I can get them to giggle, if I can just get a little giggle out of them, now we're making progress. We're getting somewhere. So my favorite way to handle that, I know she uses the bubbles on this side. On the other floor, I tend to just say goofy things or do goofy dances to get them to giggle. And then once they giggle, they've become more in control of their breathing at that point. And once you're in control of your breathing, you're in more control of your emotions as well, right?
Yeah.
But I want to stop here to say one thing. If you're listening to this and you're a parent of a student here and you bring your kid to class and they lose their mind, do not be ashamed. We do not blame you. We do not judge you for it. We know exactly what's going on psychologically and neurologically. We know what's happening. We can handle it. We know how to handle it. And it's one of the reasons that we keep an instructor to every 4 or 5 kids in class. So there's always an extra instructor that can pull a kid aside who's having a really tough time behaviorally or emotionally, and we can help them learn to regulate. We do this in training, our leadership training. Like some of you guys know that I have some like 14-year-olds that teach here that are very, very good at what they do. And even they get training in how to handle big emotions and difficult behavior with kids. They get a lot of training in it, usually about a year's worth. And fact of the matter is you can't even get a job with me until you are capable of helping a child go from a screaming, yelling tantrum or a crying, sobbing fit to calm and ready to get back into class in under 4 minutes. We can do it in under 4 minutes. We have done this so many times over the years.
And there is nothing that can happen in here that hasn't happened before.
No, we've had all kinds of craziness.
It's fine. And you know what? After class, we turn off the music and we go silent time and we do our decompression stuff. Because taking on a little person's emotions to
makes
help
us
guide
feel
them,
those emotions too. We
You
kind
know.
of end up like in the middle of it. So then when classes are over, the instructors are all like, ugh, and they're a little bit angry and a little bit like wild and a little bit just all over the place. And it takes a little while to decompress. But that's the case with any fast-paced job.
Yeah.
Any fast-paced, somewhat high-stress job, you're going to feel the same way. I actually had the same thing back when I was a collision repair technician. I would come home and I'd have to spend an hour. I would sit in the bathroom for an hour with the fan and heater on for white noise, just thinking through all the tasks I had done that day and all the tasks that led to me to do tomorrow so I could plan out how I was going to do it. I used to have to do that for an hour every time I came home before I could even settle down.
Yeah.
And kids have to do the same thing. You can't expect them to have better control of their emotions than you do. That's completely ridiculous.
But we do. We do all the time.
We do tend to expect that.
We expect them to be
But you know why
emotionally,
we expect it?
behaviorally ahead of where they're at.
Yeah, but you know why we expect it? It's because we're afraid of being judged as parents.
Mm-hmm.
As parents, we're afraid of being judged by our kids' behavior, and we need to get over that. We've got to get over that concept. As martial arts instructors, parkour instructors, we are not going to judge you based on your kid's behavior. We know that your kid is a separate individual human being with their own separate brain, their own separate experiences, and their own separate thoughts. we know that the things that come out of their mouth and the emotions that they show and the way that they show it are not necessarily a direct reflection on anything you did or said. We are well aware of that. I just wish more adults were aware of that.
Because please understand, there are things that you don't want your child to say or talk about that are completely developmentally appropriate for their age.
And normal things for them to talk about. But you're afraid of them talking about it because you're afraid someone's going to take it out of context or someone's going to judge you as a parent because they brought up that subject. But a lot of these things, there's a lot of developmentally normal standards for kids of different ages that people don't understand. I had a conversation with a parent the other night who was talking about puberty and physical attraction and that kind of thing. 'Cause, we teach preteens and teens too. So I had a parent come to me, and they were expressing something related to that. This was in a personal conversation, not in class. And they were expressing something related to that. And they said something that kind of hit me weird. So birds and the bees kind of talk. I knew what I was like as a kid. I still remember what I was like at 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old. I remember by the time I was 12, I was sailor's mouth.
Yeah. Well, we grew up on a farm too, so there was a lot of things that were not mysteries to us.
But my point is that was before the internet. Now there's the internet and YouTube and all these other things, and a lot of people, us included, let our kids on certain things. I mean, with restrictions, we monitor it and all that, but they're always still going to come across things that you might think are developmentally inappropriate for the age, but you'd be surprised at what's considered developmentally appropriate at 9 or 10 years old. So the thing is I knew this, and I knew that by the time I was 8 and 9 years old, of course, kids didn't really know exactly what they meant, but there were a lot of kids throwing around suggestive comments, suggestive things that they were copying off TV and movies and things like that, which led to us kids essentially teaching each other through bullying what these things actually mean. Because there was always that couple of kids that knew, because they figured it out early on, or their parents gave them the talk early on, and then they would educate everybody else. So here's the thing I'm trying to get at. I had the birds and bees talk with my son around 8 to 9 years old. Some people think that's too young. But if you talk to any developmental specialist, that's when you're supposed to start, 7, 8 years old, because they start to get curious around the age of 8.5, 9. No, they're not physically at that point yet, but they're mentally curious about it by that point, which, as you know, if you've ever done potty training or training to walk or anything like that, you have to do it when they're ready to do it, right? Same thing here. Problem is, too many parents put it off and go, well, they don't need to know anything about that. They haven't even hit the beginnings of puberty yet. We're going to have that talk when they're 12. Well, by the time they're 12, the kids they went to school with have already educated them. The bullies have already educated them. The internet's already educated them, and you done missed your window. Those are conversations that are recommended to happen around the ages of 9, 10, right? 8.5 through 10 years old, depending developmentally on your child. Now, there's always going to be a little wiggle room for different things. But my point is this parent brought this up to me and said, I'm not having the conversations about sexuality and things like that. My kid's only 11. In my mind, you're too late. Right? It's a little too late to talk about that because all their peers are talking about it already.
I know this particular child, and they already know more than you want them to know.
Yeah, guarantee it. Now, here's the thing. As their coaches, as their martial arts instructors, kids tend to be a little bit more open around us because they feel like we're not their parents. And yes, we'll get onto them when they get inappropriate. Don't get me wrong. We're absolutely getting onto them when they get inappropriate. But you'd be surprised what we hear sometimes, and we have to get onto them for sometimes at the younger ages. So, my point is you have to be able to approach these subjects before they become a problem, not during or after the time they become a problem, right? Think back, if you're a parent, think back to how you were at 10, 11, 12 years old and the kind of jokes you and your friends were making with each other and the kind of things bullies made fun of you for and the kind of words getting tossed around. Now look at your 10, 11-year-old and tell me that they're not going through the same stuff. Because if you do, you're fooling yourself. You're fooling yourself.
But I think we got off topic.
We did get off topic.
I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
But just to kind of recap, because we've already been on here for almost 30 minutes.
We were talking about age appropriate.
Yes.
Age appropriate ways to handle emotions and things like that.
Yes. So remember, your kids are layering, their brains are full of stress hormones by the time they get out of school, and they might melt down. They might throw a fit. They might be hard to get to do things. But just remember, try to limit their screen time, get them some unstructured playtime, get them a healthy snack, and then, ask appropriate, specific questions about their day try to connect with them.
Can I say a little bit more about unstructured playtime?
Sure.
And I know I said this before, but seriously, this unstructured playtime thing is magic, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to, yes, you're still the parent in unstructured playtime, but you have to put your parenting label kind of just a little bit to the side and give your kid the freedom to lead the play, to lead the conversation, to lead the role play. And sometimes they're going to want to do goofy little kid stuff. And then sometimes they're going to want to role play aggressive arguments and fights and things. Don't tell them it's wrong. Let them role play it out. Make it kind of fun. And then if they're starting to take it a little too far, then after the playtime, you can be like, hey, by the way, if you ever actually end up in this type of conflict or argument, this would be a better way to handle it than the way you did in the playtime. And it makes unstructured playtime allows your kid to do what they want, how they want, say what they want, which allows you the chance to see where their mind is at so you can accurately guide them to the right ways to deal with it.
Yes, we're asking you to do some parent-child therapy with your kiddo after school.
Yeah. But yeah, when you're in events like this time of year, we tend to have a lot of people quit, little kids in particular, and it almost, not every time, but it almost always comes down to my kids' behavior when they get home from school is just absolutely ridiculous, and I can't handle it, and they're not going to act right in class, and so it basically comes down to embarrassment of the parent. The parent feeling embarrassed at how their kid might act in class. Don't feel embarrassed about that, y'all. We will handle it. I had a kid the other day, I think he's 11, maybe 12. I had a kid the other day, solid kid, been with us a long time, always one of my best hard workers, right? And we were sparring the other day, and this kid lost his temper. And he went a little hard. Now, while he went hard, immediately I was jumping into this, but the other kid that he was going with, they're pretty close. They're pretty good friends. And he was handling it just fine and helping his friend calm down in the middle of it, right? And I got them separated and all that. And my biggest fear at the end of class is that fact that I saw that the kid who lost his temper was ashamed. And you could see it written all over his face. He was absolutely ashamed and embarrassed and afraid that I was going to judge him for it. So I went to him after class and had that talk. Look, man, we all lose our temper sometimes. And yes, this class is all about self-control. But every once in a while, we all lose our temper. You lost it for about 10 seconds. Then you got it back together. And I'm really proud of you for getting it together and coming out the other side. And I want you to know that it's nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing at all to be ashamed of. And sometimes you just have to tell your kid that. I know you're angry, and I know you yelled at me, and I know that was wrong, and I got on to you, but I also want you to know that you should not be ashamed of your anger. You should not be ashamed of your sadness. You should not be ashamed of your stress. Don't shame them for their feelings. If you shame them for their feelings, they will not talk about their feelings to you anymore. Do not shame them for their feelings. So there's been times that my son has had some big feels, right? And he's come home and expressed those feels in a really bad way. And I tried to work him around and get him calmed down. And he still expressed it in a wrong way. And it got to a point where I had to get on to him. Man, we don't talk to people like that. You don't talk to me like that. Go spend 30 minutes, calm down, go for a run, go do something to get yourself calmed down before we have this discussion. But every time that happens, I also turn around and apologize. I say, look, man, it's not that I wanted to get on to you, and you definitely shouldn't be ashamed of being angry. You just weren't expressing it in a healthy way, and I needed you to calm down so we could express it in a healthy way.
I had to set a boundary.
So I'm sorry for getting on to you. I'm sorry for setting that boundary. But at the same time, don't feel ashamed that I got on to you. We're going to let it go. I'm not going to hold on to it. You don't have to hold on to it. Don't be ashamed for the emotions. But next time, let's try to do it this way, right? So that we can get to a point where we can get to the bottom of the situation.
Yeah.
And any good leader uses the same concepts, right? Any good leader deals with conflict on a daily basis. Conflict with consumers and clients, conflict with the team they lead, conflict with other peer-to-peer management, conflict with other companies, conflict with people trying to sell you something. Conflict is part of leadership. and big emotions are a part of it. So to be a masterful leader, you have to be masterful at influence, emotional control, emotional regulation, and how to trick somebody else who's feeling big emotions into regulating their own emotions. The same skills we need as parenting are the same skills we would use in a leadership position to, as we move up through whatever company we work out or whatever positions we get, and you end up leading a team. These skills are just as important there.
Yep.
Just as important there.
Yep.
All right. I think that's all about we had to talk about today, right?
Yes, sir.
I know I sound a little bit like Boomhauer right there. Dang old dog talk about today. All right. So, till we see you guys again, be the best teammates you can be and be the best at being you.